Welcome to In Focus. As Israel's assault on Gaza continues, Lebanon's fragile ceasefire faces new challenges while Syria's conflict escalates. In South Korea, martial law is lifted amid protests. Across the region, shifting alliances, political crises, and external interventions intensify instability, leaving millions uncertain of their future. Let's start with the latest updates in Lebanon and Gaza. According to Ahram Online, the Israeli defense minister warns that any collapse of the recent ceasefire would lead to deeper military operations in Lebanon, which would no longer distinguish between the Lebanese army and Hezbollah. This threat heightens concerns over the fragile truce. Meanwhile, humanitarian calls intensify as doctors urge the evacuation of 25,000 critically injured Palestinians from Gaza, citing life-threatening medical conditions as they have done throughout the conflict. The UN and aid organizations continue to deliver essential support to the region where possible. International efforts towards peace and increasing humanitarian aid are becoming more focused, with Egypt hosting a ministerial conference to enhance the humanitarian response towards Gaza earlier this week. At the same time, France and Saudi Arabia are planning a conference on Palestinian statehood in June, signaling a renewed push for long-term solutions amid ongoing regional conflicts. Providing more analysis about the latest updates in Lebanon and Gaza, we're joined from Amman by Dr. Amin Al-Mashqaiba, a former Minister of Social Development and Political Science Professor at the University of Jordan. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. Sir, firstly, let's start off by asking, how do you assess the prospects of Hamas and Fatah effectively running Gaza together after this war's devastation?
Of course, there is a necessity that the two parties, Hamas and Fatah, will agree for the benefit of the Palestinian people in Gaza Strip. And knowing that Israel refused the administration of Fatah and also administration of Hamas, until this moment, Israel is still opposing any presence for Hamas or the return of Fatah to Gaza Strip. But if there is a serious American pressures against Israel to accept the presence of a common committee between Hezbollah and the Fatah movement from both sides, maybe that will help in managing this file after this destruction that reached to 90% for all the infrastructure inside Gaza, hospitals, schools, mosques, buildings. So this is completely distracted after this genocide occurred for this war that continued for more than 1 year. We also can say that Hamas will try to appear again if there is an Israeli withdrawal, even there is no indicator for this Israeli withdrawal. There is right now a delegation from Israel coming to Cairo in order to discuss a new ceasefire agreement. And of course, we know that Israel has many new rules of engagement in north of the Strip, especially in the Nord Stream axis, in order to stay in the north in Gaza Strip. And according to the statement of the defense minister and the chief, that these pressures against Hamas, at the end of the day, we will find that Hamas accepting the Israeli demands We have witnessed these systematic crimes of genocide that aim to evacuate the northern of Gaza from all these citizens. And so there are many voices amid Israel calling for the settlement again, especially those extremist religious groups that are found inside Tel Aviv and Israel. So we can see that the extremist far-right ministers inside the government calling was to reoccupy Gaza again and to have this settlement again in Gaza Strip, in addition to displace many Palestinians from Gaza Strip.
Sir, how do you interpret Israel's recent threats to penetrate deeper into Lebanon and target the Lebanese state? And what would would this mean for the regional balance of power in general?
The problem of southern Lebanon, Israel was able to keep their military bases in that region and in other places where they able to achieve advancement in some of the Lebanese villages, and they are somehow seeking to have these air raids in order to observe all the movement of Hezbollah inside Lebanon. Israel called previously to have the upper hand to control the airspace and also the porters and the river border inside Lebanon, but the USA were able to mitigate these expectations as Israel is asking to control all these regions and borders inside Lebanon. Right now, we can see this agreement with 60 days as a transition period, and during these 60 days, as Israeli stated, if Hezbollah was committed to the ceasefire and this truce, maybe we can see another scenario of calm in that region. But Israel, as it's known for everyone, they have these ambitious regarding the Litani River. In addition to that, Israel does not want any presence for Hezbollah in any regions in the southern of Litani River and also in other places in the blue line that reaches 30 kilometers and other regions that only 3 or 4 kilometers from the north and east region. So Israel seeks to end any communication or any connection between these Lebanese regions and the Syrian territories to prevent any military support to Hezbollah. And Israel has some goals, and they were able to achieve many of these goals as destruction of Hezbollah and the destruction of the infrastructure of Hezbollah, especially in the southern Lebanon and in other 26 villages in the southern Lebanon. So right now we're waiting the American rule, as we have seen Hackelstein, in order to pass this agreement for ceasefire, and we hope that these borders will kept calm, but unfortunately we have seen Israel yesterday targeted strikes. Other 5 locations, as they call it, they are locations affiliated to Hezbollah, and they are somehow strikes anything they believe it has anything to do with Hezbollah.
So, sir, you spoke a bit about like the idea of a genuine push towards a ceasefire, whether it's true or not. So let me just ask you, do you believe that in 2025 we'll witness a genuine shift towards peace in Gaza and Lebanon, or are we looking at further escalations and more destruction in the region?
Right now, as Trump is back to the White House in 20 of January, I believe that we have a different political trend, as the policies that Trump and the Republican Party believe is different from these policies that the Democrat Party believe. I mean the President Joe Biden. So Trump wants to stop all these wars, whatever, in Lebanon or in Gaza Strip and even in Syria. However, the current situation in southern Lebanon and in Gaza Strip, I think it will come in the favor for the Israeli party, as the statement that Trump mentioned yesterday, if the hostages are not released before 20th of January, the situation in the Middle East will suffer from more hell. What is could be worse than what is happening right now in southern Lebanon, and the same situation for the West Bank? I believe that these policies will be completely different from the policies we've seen from the Biden administration. Israel will be given more control by returning the deal of the century and to have this normalization with the Arab state as the United Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will bring somehow more influence to Israel.
I'm sorry, I sort of have to cut you off there because we're running out of time for this segment, but I apologize for cutting you off. A political science professor from Amman, thank you so much for your insights and thank you for joining us here on Q. In a dramatic turn of events, South Korea's president has decided to lift martial law following intense opposition and widespread protests. As tensions flare, the question remains, can the country resolve its political crisis peacefully under the rule of law? The New York Times has reported that South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol faces an impeachment motion after declaring martial law in response to a political gridlock. The move sparked protests and chaos, evoking memories of past authoritarian governments, leading to public outcry and a swift reversal within hours. The declaration also suspended parliament, political parties, and media freedom, with censorship imposed on news organizations. This, along with the growing economic instability, sent South Korea's stock market spiraling amid the deepening political crisis. Opposition lawmakers who control the National Assembly have initiated the impeachment process. If successful, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo would temporarily assume presidential duties. Providing us with more analysis about the latest developments in the crisis of South Korea, we're joined from Tunisia by Dr. Jalal Rahim, an expert in Asian affairs at the University of Gafsa. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Let me start off by asking you, how do you assess the political fallout after South Korea's president lifted the martial law under heavy opposition pressure?
Well, the political fallouts are disastrous for not only for President Yoon himself or his family, but also for the history and reputation of South Korea. Hard-won reputation of mature and stable democracy for almost half a century, since 1980, and now this hard-won reputation has been broken, has got a hard hit from an amateur, inexperienced and a cornered lame duck president who made an uncalculated adventure, and he ended up in such a fiasco and such an embarrassing fiasco that could take him to not only out of the Blue House from the presidency, but also could easily take him to the prison.
Well, you talked a bit about the idea of this being a fiasco, but what does the president's decision reveal about South Korea's democratic resilience in the face of such a crisis?
Indeed, that is something to be saluted. That is something to be highlighted. South Korean democratic culture and democratic institutions and the resilience, as you rightly said, the resilience of such institutions and the resilience of, in person, of the opposition leader, and as well as, ironically speaking here, as well as the leader of his own party, of the president's own party, the People Power Party, Han Dong-hoon, who joined forces with the opposition leader Lee Ja-ming, and they managed to convene such a historic and unprecedented meeting, a parliament meeting yesterday, amid the siege by the military and amid the breaking in of the military into the meeting room. And at the end, they eventually managed to nullify the martial law declared by the president. And the president found no choice, and he was left with no choice but to reverse and resign the martial law he wrongly and unrightly declared.
Okay, when we talk about South Korea, it's very hard to take out North Korea from the equation. Could this crisis provoke a shift in the way North Korea, or rather South Korea, approaches North Korean policy, especially given Pyongyang's silence?
Well, that's a very interesting question because given the situation, given the historic situation and the historical both situation in South Korea and its relationship with its younger sister, if we may say, the dynamics of a relationship between South and North Korea, the dialectical relationship between the two countries, the precarious situation between the two neighbors, the presence of almost 30,000 U.S. troops stationed in South Korea for almost 70 years now. All these variables should be included when analyzing the situation in South Korea. What happened in South Korea could not be isolated from its regional and international context. Now, ironically speaking, we could hear news from and viewpoints coming from North Korea testifying to the quote unquote to the right side of history North Korea has been in terms of political stability. And they are saying that, look, democracy is failing in South Korea. And look at here in North Korea, we don't have these political turmoils. We don't have these either constitutional or military coups. So it's ironical, but the situation in South Korea invites such ironical comments from North Korea.
You talked a bit about the idea of American troops there. With the United States closely monitoring the crisis, how could this affect their diplomatic stance towards South Korea, especially given the number of troops that are already there?
It has already affected the situation, either the diplomatic, the military, the political, the economic, the trade, future relations of South Korea, not only with its neighbors, but also not only with its neighbors, with its strategic allies like the United States of America, but also with faraway countries such as United Arab Emirates, where the minister, the South Korean minister of, it was a planned visit by the South Korean Minister of Technology and Economy. This visit is now cancelled. We could see a planned visit by the United States Secretary of Defense, Lloyd, also is now rescheduled. We could see a dive in the value of the South Korean won, currency won. Also, we could see an age or a moment of instability, a very serious moment of instability, politically, economically, and even militarily. Now, South Korea and the Joint Chief of Staff in South Korea is now the person who is making the headlines today, because he's saying that what is going on in South Korea could invite some demands in South Korea between the South Korean and American troops, and they are hoping for the best, but they are preparing for the worst.
Okay, Dr. Jalal Rahim, an expert in Asian affairs. Thank you so much for joining us from Tunisia, and hopefully we'll get back to you again as the situation develops in South Korea. Thank you so much for joining us. As serious conflict intensifies, armed factions are advancing in Aleppo and Hama, sparking accusations of external interference. Russia has claimed that Ukraine supports militants, while Iran and Turkey point to foreign influence, prolonging the crisis. The situation raises concerns over regional stability, especially in Lebanon and Israel. Well, Ahram Online has reported that the US forces launched a self-defense strike in eastern Syria targeting truck-mounted rocket launchers, a T-64 tank, and mortars near the mission support site Euphrates Base. The Pentagon confirmed the attacks followed rocket and mortar fire aimed at the base. The Pentagon has not yet identified the perpetrators, though the area is known to be frequented by armed groups and Syrian forces. This strike, aimed at defending U.S. troops, is not linked to the ongoing conflict in Aleppo, according to the U.S. U.S. troops, numbering around 900, remain stationed in Syria despite rising tensions in the region. To provide more analysis regarding the current conflict in Syria, we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Hamid Faris, an international relations professor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. How do you assess, sir, the Russian accusations regarding Ukraine's military support when it comes to the Syrian factions?
Well, welcome, greetings for you, Ms. Reham, and for all the viewers of Qnews. In my play, I think it's difficult to see what is happening right now in Syria. These swift movement for all the armed groups and fractions inside Syria without a support, external support, especially that you can see Syria as a competition between the major powers, and each state is trying to achieve their interests, especially that most of the reporters mentioned that there was a Ukrainian delegation that met with some of the fractions, armed fractions, in order to undermine the Russian rule and having serious pressures against Russia in the Middle East in order to exploit this in the coming negotiation between Russia and Ukraine. This will never be happen to occur without coordination with the major powers, especially the USA, as these armed fractions, according to the reports, these fractions were able to receive drones and many advanced weapons that enables them to move swiftly to control many regions in the north, whatever the west or the east. So these support and to have Syria as a region for international competitions, whatever USA and Russia that are trying to find a presence in the Middle East, and they are trying to achieve their personal interests on the coast and on the coast of the security of the Middle East.
Sir, what impact does the external interference have on Syria's ongoing crisis and the prospects for a resolution to this?
These external interference, as they extend for that regard, we need to be sure that the war and the crisis will be prolonged for Syria for long years, because what is happening right now is confirming that the situation in Syria will not be calm soon, because the Syrian regime and the army move to have these strong strikes and start this counter-offensive to destroy these armed fractions that working against the stability of the region and against the security of the region. It's not logically at all to consider these armed fractions who are fighting the Syrian people that they are opposition. The opposition are honorable people coordinating with the current regime to have some common ground to achieve the stability. But this kind of barbaric attacks, as these armed fractions try to have a new reality inside Syria, this will have negative implications, threatening the unity and stability of the Syrian territories, and maybe cause divisions, especially that if the Syrian regime was removed, it will have a negative implications in other neighboring states, and that prompted the Iraqi to start securing their borders, because they have been suffering from the tourist for a long period. And these regions, we can remember it was many armed fractions used to exploit these regions. So I think the international community and the Security Council need to support the Syrian regime, because if any kind of attacks happen against them, that will create a great instability in the Middle East.
Sir, you talked about like neighboring countries and its negativity on neighboring countries. You talked about Iraq specifically, but if we could talk about like other influences, can the Syrian crisis influence the already very tense situation between Lebanon and Israel?
Of course, if we have these calculations, we can understand there are some countries gaining and some countries losing, which means that the USA and also Israel are winning. Israel, USA, Turkey, they are all winning from this situation, because the USA want to undermine the Russian rule, and they are searching to restore this missing rule in Syria. And that what President Trump stated, he has mentioned that the dependence of the Syrian regime on only Iran and Turkey that lead and Russia that lead for that situation. And for Turkey also, they want to have these pressures against the Syrian regime to cause normalization, but with these specific demands.
I apologize, but we sort of have to cut you off there. I apologize, we're out of time, but thank you so much, sir, for joining us. That was Dr. Hamid Faris, an international relations professor, joining us from Cairo. Thank you so much for your insights, and we're surely going to get back to you again. That wraps up our episode for today of In Focus. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.